Okay, so have you ever felt like you're just drowning in to-dos? Like you have all these big plans and ideas, but the day just slips away and you're left wondering where the time went. I think we've all been there. You try out the latest time management apps, those fancy planners, all that. But for some reason, it never really sticks.
Oh, yeah. It's a common trap, isn't it? That feeling of spinning your wheels, but never quite reaching that sense of control, even with the best tools at your disposal.
Well, today we're going to take a closer look at a resource you sent over that really digs into this. Esor's 30 Challenges of Time Management. You might know Esor from his blog, Esor. He's got this super practical approach to tech and productivity, and his time management courses are really popular too.
What I find so insightful about Esor is that he's all about real-world solutions. He's not just throwing out these abstract theories. He's speaking from experience, tackling the kind everyday problems we all face when we're trying to wrangle our time.
Exactly. So, in this deep dive, we're going to try and pull out that practical wisdom from Esor's book. We want to figure out why those traditional methods don't always work and explore those alternative approaches he suggests. The techniques that can actually help us break free from that feeling of just running in place.
And what's interesting is that Esor really emphasizes understanding the root of the problem before you even think about solutions. It's like laying the groundwork before you start building, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's dive into that first point, why the traditional time management thing so often misses the mark. It's like we're trying to fix the symptoms without actually figuring out what's causing the problem in the first place.
Right. Like so many of us jump straight to implementing a new system, the calendar app, the to-do list method, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we haven't stopped to think about what we actually need, what our specific goals are, what those unique obstacles are that we're facing.
It's like he uses this great analogy. It's like having a perfect map, but starting your journey in the completely wrong spot. You can have the most detailed plan, the fanciest GPS, but if you don't know where you need to go or what's blocking your path, you're just going to end up further away from your destination.
Absolutely. And Esser's point is that solving those problems, those bottlenecks, should come first. That's how you get the momentum to build a more personalized system later on.
It's about getting those small wins early on, right? Like tackling those immediate problems gives you the fuel and the insight to actually create a system that works for you in the long run.
Yeah, he makes this distinction between solving problems as the foundation and building a system as kind of like the completion. You've got to know what needs fixing before you can design the right tools for the job.
Okay, so then we get to this other big struggle, which I think a lot of us can relate to, and that's the whole self-blame thing. We set these ambitious goals, we inevitably hit a roadblock, and then it's like that inner critic starts going crazy. You're not disciplined enough. Why can't you just focus? All that. It's so easy to get stuck in that spiral of negativity.
Ugh, it's the worst, right?
Right.
And Amesor actually offers a different way to look at it. He suggests that before we go down that self-criticism rabbit hole, we should take a step back and really examine the goal itself and the process we've set up.
He's basically saying, hold on, before you beat yourself up, ask yourself some questions. Is this goal actually achievable right now? Does it even align with what you truly value? Have you designed a workflow that actually supports you and takes those potential obstacles into account? Have you even thought about how you might overcome those obstacles?
What's really interesting is that he sees time management as this cognitive process. It's about thinking strategically and adapting to those challenges, not just trying to brute force your way through sheer willpower.
It's about being smart about it, not just trying to be tough. Right.
hmm
So instead of getting caught in that negativity, Acer suggests this whole reframing of what time management is all about. And he challenges that common idea that it means sacrificing all the good stuff, like cutting out fun activities or skimping on rest just to get more work done.
Totally. He's like, forget that zero-sum game. He's advocating for this idea of choosing results. It's about being intentional, deciding what outcomes are truly important to you, both in work and life, and then finding those effective ways to actually achieve them.
Yeah, he uses this great example about family time. He's like, just reducing your work hours doesn't automatically equal a happier family life unless you're making those conscious choices to be present and engaged with your family during that time. It's not just about the quantity of time, it's about the quality of how you're spending it.
It's a really important distinction. And then he takes it even further, comparing time management to product design for your life, which I think is brilliant. It's not just about managing a to-do list. It's about designing a successful outcome for your life overall.
Love that analogy. It totally shifts the focus, right? It's not about sticking to this rigid plan. It's about designing actions with that flexibility built in. Like Life is unpredictable, so our approach to time management needs to be adaptable too.
And that brings us to his take on procrastination, which I think is really interesting. He doesn't see it as this personal failing or a lack of willpower. He sees it as a signal, like it's telling you something. Maybe the task is just too big and overwhelming, or maybe it's not actually aligned with your priorities, or maybe it's just not the right thing to be focusing on at this moment.
So instead of beating yourself up for procrastinating, he's saying use that feeling as information. Maybe you need to break that task down into smaller chunks, or maybe you need to approach it from a different angle that feels more engaging. He even talks about simplifying a complex action or figuring out how to do things in those little pockets of time you have throughout the day. When you think about times you've tried to implement a new system, does that resonate with you at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. And what it becomes is this iterative process, right? You design an action, you try it out, and then whatever feedback you get, even if it's that urge to procrastinate, informs what you do next. You adjust and revise your approach. This is especially crucial when you're dealing with something new or unfamiliar, something where you haven't figured out the best path forward yet.
Okay, so then we've got this other challenge that I think a lot of people face, and that's feeling like you have to do everything. You're constantly adding to this mental to-do list, and it just keeps getting longer and longer.
Yeah, it's like the other side of that coin, right? We're either stuck procrastinating or we're drowning in tasks. It's that feeling of being completely overwhelmed by all the things that seem to demand our attention.
And this is where Isor's own experience with his blog after his child was born gets really insightful. He talks about these two key mistakes he made when he suddenly had way less time for writing.
And what's so relatable is that these mistakes come from that very common anxiety of wanting to be productive and make the most of limited time. His first mistake was that he tried to find these exciting or high-impact topics because he felt the pressure of having less time to write.
But what ended up happening was that all that time he spent trying to come up with the perfect topic actually took away from his writing time. It's like that whole search for the ideal topic became this counterproductive cycle, you know?
And then the other mistake was trying to stick to his old schedule of publishing one article a day. And because he had less time overall, he started writing these more superficial pieces that didn't have the same depth or quality as his earlier work.
Which, of course, made him feel even more stressed and dissatisfied, right? So he had to make a change. With much less time to work with, he realized he needed to be more focused. Instead of chasing after trends or trying to predict what would be popular, he started writing about his own struggles with efficiency, like the tools and techniques he was using to manage his time. And it was a way to integrate his blog with his own real-life needs.
When you think about your own to-do list, does that idea of focusing on completion resonate at all with you?
Totally. So his blog basically became this documentation of his problem-solving journey. And he really had to get creative with those small pockets of time. He wasn't spending it trying to find these groundbreaking new topics. He was using it to actually write about the solutions he'd already figured out. His commute became outlining time, his walks turned into brainstorming sessions for titles, and lunch breaks were for drafting paragraphs. And to deal with that dip in quality, he decided to ditch the rigid daily publishing schedule. He started taking the time to really research and write to his satisfaction before publishing anything. This meant fewer articles overall, but the quality went way up.
And it's from those experiences that he comes to this really powerful realization.
Mm.
The real value isn't in just identifying important tasks, it's in actually completing whatever you set out to do.
And it really challenges how we think about valuable tasks, right? We tend to prioritize based on some external measure of importance, but Iser is kind of flipping that script. He's saying that it's the act of seeing something through to completion with that attention to detail and quality that actually makes it truly valuable.
He makes the point that effective time management isn't about cramming more and more important things into your schedule. It's about being more mindful of the time you have and making sure that whatever you choose to do, you do it well.
So, to wrap up this part of our deep dive into Iser's ideas, let's go over some of those key takeaways. We've moved from thinking of time management as this set of strict rules to recognizing that it's about being proactive and solving problems. We've shifted from seeing it as constant sacrifice to understanding that it's about making conscious choices about what we want to achieve. It's less about rigid control and more about thoughtfully designing actions that work for us. And finally, it's not just about starting tasks, it's about completing them fully, and that's what ultimately determines their value.
And it's all drawn directly from the source material you shared, so it's a really personalized exploration of Esar's insights, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. So I want to encourage everyone listening to think about your own time management struggles in light of these new ideas. Think about those areas where you feel stuck or overwhelmed or unproductive.
And ask yourself, how could you apply Esar's idea of designing actions or focusing on that next achievable outcome to actually shift your approach in those specific situations?
This is just the beginning, though. There's so much more in Esor's book about practical strategies and nuances, so we encourage you to check it out or to find other resources that resonate with you and that focus on this kind of real-world, practical approach to time management. Hopefully, this has given you a new way to think about your relationship with time and how to be more effective in achieving your goals.
One thing that really stood out to me is how much Esar's own journey, with all the challenges and adjustments he made, provides this relatable and practical guidance. It shows that time management is this ongoing process of learning and refining your approach.
Totally. It's not about finding some magic formula. It's about developing a more mindful and adaptive approach. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.